Well, my guest today is Francesca Albanese, who is the UN's Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territories. She was the first woman to be appointed to this position in May 2022. Then, 17 months later, we all know what happened on the 7th of October 2023. Well, her role as the UN's Special Rapporteur has just been renewed, extending her mandate until April 2028. Francesca Albanese, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just first of all, how do you see your role? What does it entail as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So as a Special Rapporteur of the United Nations, I am appointed by the member states of the UN sitting in the Human Rights Council to monitor, document, and report on the human rights violations taking place in the occupied Palestinian territory, so the territory that Israel has occupied for 57 years now. The Gaza Strip is Jerusalem and the West Bank. And I would have to produce 2 reports per year after visiting the occupied Palestinian territory, but I am prevented from doing so by Israel.
Okay, we're going to talk a bit more about that, and we're also going to talk about your latest report in just a moment. But I just want to ask you to cast your mind back to the 7th of October 2023. You were in that position already, as I said in the introduction. What went through your mind as that news broke?
It was a horrible, horrible day because there was enormous violence against the Israelis. It was quite new as a scene, and it was shocking all the more. And so it was a day of very strong feelings, a day of revolt inside, because I didn't know how I would do this, I would continue to do this job. But it took me a few hours to come back to senses and realize that this event, this violent event, was the product of over 70 years of violence and depredation of Palestine and the Palestinians, and it had to be resolved as soon as possible. This was the opportunity to go and resolve the root causes of all violence in the land between the river and the sea, which is an illegal occupation turned into apartheid, and unfortunately now escalating into a genocide.
Okay, we're going to talk about some of those legal definitions in a moment, like genocide, because I know you have a legal background. But I just want to ask you before that, we were saying in the introduction your mandate has just been renewed. Obviously, in Israel, not everyone is happy about that. We heard Danny Danon, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, saying, quote, "The renewal of Francesca Albanese's mandate is a disgrace and a moral stain on the United Nations. Albanese is a notorious anti-Semite who has repeatedly expressed not only biased views against Israel, but also hateful rhetoric targeting the Jewish people as a whole." I'm sure you saw that. What do you say to that?
No, I didn't. I hadn't seen it. But, I've been receiving these attacks since even before becoming a special rapporteur. First of all, the real disgrace for the United Nations is that there are 60,000 people who have been killed in 20 months, and Gaza has been turned into a meat grinder, and it continues under our eyes. And while member states starts uttering words of condemnation while trading with one hand in weapons and trading with goods and with the other. So this is the real disgrace. Then Francesca Albanese being an anti-Semite, not really. Criticism of the state of Israel is all the more necessary given the crimes that it commits institutionally and structurally against the Palestinians. It's not my fault. It's a fact, and it's a responsibility I have from the United Nations. Then the weaponization of anti-Semitism is vile, because anti-Semitism exists. It's real as Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian racism, but weaponizing it to justify crimes against a virtually defenseless populations, it's really ludicrous.
You talk about the current reality in Gaza, and we've been reporting extensively on that here on Al Arabiya. We heard an official at the ICRC describing the situation there as worse than hell. Is that roughly how you view the situation there?
Yeah, I think. Look, again, I've not set foot in Gaza in the last years, but I've had my eyes and ears on Gaza for over 600 days, and it's been horrible. I really don't understand how we keep functioning with all what we have seen, which is not just, and I'm not saying just in order to downplay what I'm saying, but I've seen on the one hand the brutality, the really brutality unleashed against the Palestinians as a people in all its forms. It's been really vicious. But on the other hand, I've also collected evidence on the people who have done it. And the executors, the executioners of this genocide are really young people and young Israelis, and who have been turned into political pawns in an ideological war in order to gain what? Land. It's all about the land.
And as you said at the beginning, this is a land that you're not able to visit. And I'm just assuming that in your capacity as a special rapporteur, I mean, that must be extremely frustrating for you, isn't it?
Well, what is frustrating is the fact that this is a situation that is not new. This has been ongoing the occupation has been ongoing for 57 years during which Israel has been allowed to build colonies after colonies, which are a war crime, to forcibly displace the Palestinians, which amounts to a crimes against humanity, in perpetuity, without ever being accountable. This is frustrating. It's also frustrating to see member states condemning but not following suit with words, and we know why, because Israel is so entangled in our economy through the United States, but not only. It's very difficult to disentangle Israel from the purchase of weapons that takes place from India to Europe, and from the financial interests that are connected to this. It has very much to do with profits. This is frustrating. And of course, it's also frustrating to see member states that nowadays the best thing they can come up with is the two-state solution. What an affront to the Palestinians who are dying. What an affront to the Israelis who have died. What an affront to those who really want peace and know that peace cannot happen without full respect of human rights of everyone, and keep on talking about a political process that they don't even believe in, because we know that many European countries are not ready to recognize the state of Palestine. They're just ready to put money on the capacity building of the Palestinian Authority, which means kicking the can in the air in perpetuity. So this is what is really frustrating for me.
Are there any historical parallels that you can draw in your mind to what's happening in Gaza right now?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I don't think that this is, to understand this, what is happening to the Palestinians, one needs to understand what 500 years of colonialism, of European-led colonialism, have done to the world. Millions of people have been genocided from Australia, Canada, the United States. What we call liberal democracies today are all countries birthed from genocides of indigenous people, controlling the land, controlling the resources, displacing the indigenous, replacing them with the settlers. It's so different from what's happening to Palestine. What is shocking is that it's happening in 2025. We have had 70 years plus of international human rights system, and again, the international law is as strong as the will of states to implement it. And it's clear today that, again, commercial interests come before the life of people. But if I have to think of a parallel as well, as a European, I'm very, I was brought up with a lesson learned, what we thought were the lesson learned from the Holocaust that we committed, from the genocide that we committed in our own land, on our own European soil. The Jewish people, together with the Roma and Sinti, and together with the disabled people, were exterminated because they were the other, compared to the idea of the pure race. That was not something that traveled across some crazy people with something like the Nazis. It's something that was tolerated by the society, because the Jewish people were our brothers and sisters, taken away from our cities, kicked out of civil life through regular laws. In my country, we kicked out the Jewish people of ordinary civil life with the racial laws, preventing them to take part on civil life, to work in universities, in hospitals, etc. This is how genocide starts. It doesn't, We fail to understand that genocide is not about the means, the concentration camps, rather than the machetes. Genocide is the intentional destruction of a people as such. And what we have done to the Jewish people reminds me of what is happening today to the Palestinians, starving them, torturing them, raping them to death, while everyone is watching. Everyone is watching, from Europe to the United States to the Arab region. And is it possible that no one, 191 member states, other than the United States and Israel, 191 member states cannot stop it altogether?
You raised some interesting points, and I wanted to get back to the word genocide, because you've used it on a number of occasions already, just a few short minutes into this interview. I want to ask you, you've got this background as a legal scholar, and I'd like to ask you what legal basis supports this claim that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, just in terms of the label and the terminology. Talk us through that.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, had we had this interview in March or April or May 2024, I would understand your question, because back then I was pretty much a lone voice together with other special rapporteurs talking of genocide. But today there seems to be a growing consensus about that. The Commission of Inquiry on Israel-Palestine of the UN recognized acts of genocide. The Special Committee of the UN on Israeli practices has recognized that Israel is committing genocide. Amnesty International has produced a 300-page report saying that Israel is committing genocide. Forensic Architecture has provided an 800-page report documenting the cartography of a genocide. There are Israeli genocide, Holocaust scholars who are saying that we cannot avoid the reality that Israel is committing genocide. So let me unpack it. What constitutes genocide is explained at Article 2 of the Genocide Convention, which refers to the genocide is the intentional destruction of a group as such. And the Palestinians are a group as such who's been recognized at risk of genocide already by the International Court of Justice in January 2024. Israel has been ordered measure to stop its genocidal acts that could be genocidal, like acts of killing, infliction of severe bodily and mental harm, like torture or sadism against the targeted group, or creation of conditions of life calculated to bring about destruction among the group, or the prevention of birth, like destroying the fertility clinic. So this is what constitutes genocide. Israel has received provisional measures ordered by the ICJ in January, in March, in May. There have been resolutions calling for a ceasefire already in June last year. Nothing has stopped. The thing is that how can you miss the genocidal intent when it has been declared, said, there have been called for destruction of Gaza, not uninvolved civilians, there is no one innocent, even the children are involved. There has been an increasing upfront call to kill kids in Gaza. And it's not just that they've said it. They've done it. Israel has one of the most sophisticated armies in the world. So every missile it launches, it's for a purpose. And the reason why this attack on Gaza has been totally disproportionate, totally indiscriminate, totally in disregard of the principle of proportionality of military action, has turned Gaza has pulverized Gaza. So Gaza has been destroyed. And one response for genocide, not just for the actions, but for the omissions. So this is not just the responsibility, in my view, of two members of the government who are now wanted, one current, one past, who are wanted by the ICC for crimes against humanity and war crimes, which can well coexist in a genocidal climate in a genocidal spectrum.
Okay.
But what have the other members of the government done? Supported it? What have the members of the parliament done? Encouraging the raping of Palestinians in jail, the killing of children. And what has the judiciary done? What is the population, the majority population in Israel doing while a minority protests against it? So again, I don't know what else does Israel need to do to be found guilty of genocide?
Okay, so let me ask you this. Who, in your opinion, bears the greatest responsibility for the humanitarian catastrophe which we can see on our screens in Gaza? Does it rest with one person, or to whom do you attribute full responsibility?
No, I don't think, as I said, it doesn't rest with one person. Genocide is a collective endeavor. It's never an act, it's a process. And indeed, I mean, my deepest regret as a special rapporteur is that I had been alerted already in 2023 by some Israeli Holocaust studies scholars that the situation was included precursors of genocide. Had I been as knowledgeable as I am now on genocide, I would have totally sided with them. Instead, I ignored that. But what Israel was doing to the Palestinians, the extrajudicial killings without accountability ever, the forced displacement, the segregation, the mass incarceration, the dehumanization against the Palestinians was one of the extreme. So the responsibility for it rests first and foremost with Israel as a state. There is no question about that. And it's just that, unfortunately, it takes time for people to come around and realize what they're doing. We have never been good at complying with that with that obligation in the Genocide Convention, that is to prevent genocide. How do you prevent genocide if people deny that? Even when there was the ICJ advisory, even when there was an ICJ set of provisional measures saying Israel risks to be committing genocide, or there is a plausible risk of irreparable harm for the Palestinians under the Genocide Convention, no one really halted the transfer of weapons. No one really imposed the sanctions on Israel. So you see, it's an whole system. It looks like a joint criminal enterprise. Of course, there are states who are very responsible, like the United States, and of course, its responsibility should be assessed on a judicial level. But at the same time, other states, what are they doing? There are states who are continuing to provide weapons, and they should be their governments should be investigated for complicity with genocide as soon as possible.
Now, it's reported that you have been targeted because you're outspoken. We can hear that. You've got strong opinions, and you're extremely passionate about this cause. Tell us about those threats and the fact that you've been targeted. Who's targeted you, and what form have the threats taken?
I push back on the fact that I have strong opinions and I'm passionate. First, because they're both incorrect. They're both mischaracterization. I don't have strong opinions. I have a strong sense of what is international law, and I take seriously the commitment to serve the Human Rights Council as I've been requested. The sense I don't have a cause. I'm not committed to a cause at all. I mean, I've never engaged on the question of Palestine as an activist. Yes, I've dealt with the question of Palestinian refugees, Palestinian forced displacement, but I didn't know as much as I do know now on Palestine itself, like the occupied Palestinian territory. Even if I've lived there, I've been there serving UNRWA and serving Palestinian refugees. So the thing is that I'm not passionate. I am disgusted. This is what I am, by the failure of the international system for which I, like many, have given really my best years. I've really believed in it, and I want it to work. So it's quite different.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Because of being firm, objective, and speaking with integrity, I'm threatened. Yes, but like many.
But tell me about the threats that you faced. I wanted to ask you specifically because it's reported that you have been threatened for expressing the opinions you express and for doing the work you do. Just tell us about that.
I think it's pretty obvious, the fact that I'm accused of being an anti-Semite, while on the other hand, having the support, the appreciation, really there is a cocoon of Jewish organization, Jewish scholars, Jewish people around me. So this has been a real source of strength for me from the very beginning of my mandate. But being accused of as an anti-Semite, as a European, with the past I have, with the sense of consciousness that I have of what we have done, what is our past, it's very heavy. So this has been, or saying that I'm a pro-terror, that I've incited terrorism against Israeli, or saying that I have not condemned the crimes that have been committed against Israelis on October 7. These are pure lies, or that I've taken money. I'm doing what I'm doing as a volunteer. I've even put my teaching and my work aside to deal with this, because genocide is something as enormous as anything I've ever done. So because of this, I do receive threats. There are individual threats that have come my way, in various means. And then there are the threats coming from member states who create a violent environment against me, because they really point at me like an evil person, and this is a situation. This is incitement to violence against me. I've arrived to the United States, and for days there were billboards in Times Square and other places with my face, and I was accused of being an anti-Semite or a pro-terrorist, and again, it's very heavy, but at the same time, what can I do? This is what everyone, from students to faculty members to journalists to activists, this is what everyone daring to criticize Israel and the system that today is covering up for Israel has to endure.
So I take the point, and you face threats and harsh words, and I can imagine that can be frightening as well. And I'm wondering if it puts you off. But there are people, obviously large numbers of people, who support what you're doing. What do Palestinians say when they meet you? What sort of things do they say to you?
Thank you. So it's quite emotional, because I understand. I mean, I feel sorry for them that they need internationals to speak about what they're enduring, because they have a strong voice. They are an incredible, noble people, and strongly intellectually from our point of view, and they have been the victims of our misery. Our human misery. I mean, what the Palestinians are enduring speak to our failure, not to theirs. Speak to our lack of humanity, not to theirs. You know. No, absolutely. There is a total outpour of love wherever I go. So this is why I'm saying, yes, the threats are there, and I don't want to talk too much about that, because I don't want to give even more ideas to people to become vile toward me and. Let's say my private life, there is so much love. Where I live in Tunisia, where I travel to other Arab countries, or in Europe, wherever I go, there are people really crying when they see me, which is pretty astonishing. But this is the reality. It's a time that has broken many souls.
Yeah, I wonder how history is going to look back on this chapter. But just to wrap up our conversation, what's your message to world leaders right now?
Why are you doing that? It's not yours. The planet is not yours. The world is not yours. Try to think that you're not going to be here for a long time. This is what I would say to the world leaders, knowing that they wouldn't care much. What I feel like doing is sending a message to those who are not traditional leaders, like those who do not control armaments, do not control huge capitals, who do not control algorithms, and have only to lose if they stay in this watching passive mode in the time of a genocide. Yes, as you say, how will history look at us? The point is not how history will look at us. How can we look at ourselves in the mirror when another people is really losing everything? It's time to sacrifice a little bit of our time, a little bit of our comfort in order for these people not to be completely annihilated. But also, if we think that what's happening to the Palestinians is going to be limited to the Palestinians, we're really naive. Our societies will be next.
Okay, well, we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the Occupied Palestinian Territories. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.